This is exactly the problem that I created Nutrivore to solve. Hit me, Producer Potts.
Dr. Sarah, you have quoted an alarming statistic in your book, Nutrivore. You said that 60% of Americans have at least one diet preventable disease, and 40% have two or more diet preventable diseases. Can you first explain to us, what is a diet preventable disease?
Yeah, absolutely. A diet preventable disease is one whose risk, onset, progression, symptomology, or severity can be directly or indirectly influenced by our dietary habits. So they're basically diseases that can be either prevented or mitigated by adopting healthier eating patterns. So, for example, cardiovascular disease is a diet preventable disease. While there's lots of risk factors beyond diet, we know that diets high in saturated fats, trans fats, added sugars, and sodium all increase risk of developing a cardiovascular disease. While eating plenty of fruits, vegetables, seafood, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, and heart-healthy fats like those in olive oil all reduce our risk. Another example of a diet preventable disease is type 2 diabetes. High calorie intake in general, high sugar and refined carbohydrate intake, and high fat, especially saturated fat intake, are all risk factors for type 2 diabetes. Whereas eating lots of fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts and seeds, eating a balanced diet, and avoiding overeating all reduce risk of type 2 diabetes. Again, acknowledging that type 2 diabetes is multifactorial and diet is only one risk factor. Some cancers are diet preventable disease. For example, high intake of processed meats increases the risk for colorectal cancer. And diets abundant in fruits and vegetables reduce risk of not just those cancers more directly linked to diet, but cancer in general. Again, acknowledging that cancer is incredibly complex and there are other risk factors other than diet. So the statistics are scary. It's estimated that something like 11 million deaths globally are attributable to poor diet, which accounts for approximately 22% of adult deaths. And the US, where the statistics that I included in my book come from, poor diet is considered responsible for approximately 20% of stroke, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes costs, estimated to be about $50 billion per year. So again, there are other risk factors for diet preventable disease, such as genetics and epigenetics, social determinants of health, other health-related behaviors like whether or not we smoke or drink, age, and lifestyle factors like how active we are, how much sleep we get, and how much stress we're under. So adopting healthier eating patterns is not a guarantee that we will prevent diet preventable disease, but it is still a very clear point of intervention.
Dr. Sarah, what are the biggest contributors to these statistics?
I think there are several contributors, and I would be remiss to not mention ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods are made with ingredients that have undergone industrial processing, which can degrade and ultimately strip out a lot of the nutrients inherent to the original whole food ingredients. They tend to be high in calories and low in essential nutrients, while being addictively delicious. Studies actually show that the more ultra-processed foods someone eats, the lower on average their dietary intake of fiber, protein, potassium, zinc, magnesium, vitamin A, vitamin B3, vitamin B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, and vitamin E. Now, some ultra-processed foods can absolutely fit into a healthy diet. Studies show that getting 20% or fewer of our calories from ultra-processed foods poses no health harm. But it's estimated that about 60% of the calories consumed in the United States come from ultra-processed foods. So while we don't need to eliminate them completely, moderating their intake is really important to ensure an overall healthy eating pattern. That being said, there are systemic barriers to doing so. Ultra-processed foods tend to be easily accessible, available at every corner store and gas station. They're extremely convenient. They tend to be shelf stable. They require very little time and energy to prepare. And on average, they cost less than half of their whole food counterparts. So they are very hard to avoid, especially for low-income households. But ultra-processed foods are not the only culprit here. And I think a lot of the blame has to be laid at the feet of diet culture. With so many diets promoting restrictive mindsets with foods and demonizing foods and entire food groups. Promising quick fixes focused on weight loss, often at the expense of our health. Diet culture has taught us so many wrong things about foods. Not just wrong things about what foods are healthy, but fear of food. And the effect is to drive extreme and unsustainable approaches to food choice, which both leads to yo-yo dieting and magnifies nutrient shortfalls. And another culprit here is also behind why we are so susceptible to fad diets, which is the lack of basic knowledge about nutrition. We are not taught nutritional sciences in schools. We don't learn about the different vitamins and the different minerals and how they're used by our body, how getting enough can lower our risk of diseases like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. When you combine that with several generations of people who have learned how to diet but not how to eat, well, no wonder so many people are confused about what a healthy and balanced diet even looks like. And of course, food choice is not the only factor here. Yes, there are risk factors for diet-preventable disease that we have little to no control over, like our age or our genes or our socioeconomic status. But it's also important to acknowledge the interaction with lifestyle. So for example, not getting enough sleep on a regular basis increases our appetite and magnifies cravings, in addition to being a direct risk factor itself. Sedentary lifestyle actually also increases appetite and magnifies cravings, while itself directly impacting our metabolic health. And I don't need to tell anyone that stress increases appetite and cravings. We all know that one all too well. So barriers to improving diet quality go beyond social determinants of health and sometimes go into other health-related behaviors and lifestyle.
Wow, Dr. Sarah, thank you so much. This was a lot to take in, a little scary, feels a little heavy. You mentioned a lot of things, different things that impact our health. But like from a practical standpoint, what can we do about it?
This is exactly the problem that I created Nutrivore to solve. Nutrivore is a dietary philosophy centered on getting all the nutrients our bodies need from the foods we eat without engaging in restrictive mindsets or diet mentality. And acknowledging both the systemic barriers to access as well as the vacuum of knowledge to inform those day-to-day choices, Nutrivore, in addition to being a dietary philosophy, is that broad education in nutritional sciences that we all need to understand what a healthy, balanced diet even looks like. So that's why I have created so much content and resources to help teach you what nutrients do in the body and how they interact with health and disease, what types of foods have what types of nutrients, and the eating patterns that help ensure we get the full range of nutrients our bodies need, while getting off the on-again, off-again diet roller coaster for good. So if you have struggled to adopt healthier eating patterns, or if you've already developed a diet-preventable disease, it's not your fault. It's not because you lack willpower or because you're lazy. The system is stacked against us. Diet culture sets you up to fail, so you will buy the next diet program or supplement regime or exercise program. But knowledge is power, and that is what Nutrivore is here to do. Focusing on these small, affordable, simple steps that add up to make a huge difference. So if you're excited to learn more about Nutrivore and start making those simple swaps and easy additions that can up your nutrient intake and improve diet quality, my best resource is my book, Nutrivore, The Radical New Science for Getting the Nutrients You Need from the Foods You Eat, available wherever books are sold. Super discounted on Amazon right now, and it might be at your local library. If it's not, feel free to put in a request with the local librarian. But also, I have lots of other free resources that you can tap into. My entire website, nutrivore.com, which has detailed articles about all of the different ways that nutrients interact with our health and the nutritional values of all different kinds of foods, along with lots of practical tips and resources like recipes, and the searchable Nutrivore Score database of nearly 8,000 foods so you can start learning about the most nutrient-dense foods. My entire website is free to use. And I have a free weekly newsletter that shares bite-sized information about a nutrient, a food that contains that nutrient, a recipe that uses that food, and other practical tips and resources. And when you sign up for my free weekly newsletter, I send you 5 free guides that are all about jumpstarting Nutrivore. You can sign up for my newsletter at nutrivore.com/join. And of course, I invite you to hang out with me here, where I share lots of great fun fact information and practical tips that teach you how to eat and not how to diet.